Welcome. Today we're going to learn Parshas Yisro. So, the first thing I want to talk about is, I want to talk about a very, very important issue this week. But before we get to that issue, I want to talk about something else earlier in the Parsha. Vayisru mirafidim, vayavoyu midbar Sinai. Klal Yisrael, they traveled from Refidim and they came to Midbar Sinai. Now in Refidim, there was a problem, they complained. So Rashi says, V'yisru Refidim, Lama hutzrich lachzer lefarish meichanasu. Why does he have to tell us where they came from? It already says, V'ksiv Refidim, hoyechoinim. It says they were in Refidim, b'yudu Hashem Sham so. They were in Refidim, now they came to Midbar Sinai. Why do you have to tell us they left from Refidim? Ela lahakish nesiyosam Refidim lebiyosam lemidbar Sinai. It should tell you that they left Refidim in the same condition, in the same state of mind, or the same condition as they were in Midbar Sinai. Ma biyosam lemidbar Sinai b'teshuvah, just like when Midbar Sinai was teshuvah, af nesiyosam Refidim b'teshuvah. They did teshuvah. So the Mefarshim ask, where do you see that they did teshuvah in Midbar Sinai? I mean, could be before they went, each person did teshuvah, but it's not. You don't see anywhere in the Psukim, in the Parsha, that there was an inyan of teshuvah by Kabbalah Torah. They came to Kabbalah Torah. So, and we're making a hekesh, just like over there was teshuvah by Sinai, so there was also teshuvah when they left Refidim. Where do you see teshuvah? So, I'd like to point out a Gemara in Kedushin. The Gemara in Kedushin says like this: a person is Mekadesh and Isha, al menas shani tzaddik. He's Mekadesh and Isha, and on the condition that he's a tzaddik. Afilu Rosh Gomer, even if we know that he's a Rosh Gomer, he's a big Rosha, everybody knows this person is a Rosha, Mekudeshes. The Kedushin is Chal. Why? Shema here b'teshuvah b'datoi. Maybe at that moment he had to hear a teshuvah and then he's taka tzaddik. So there was a kiyum of the kedushin. That night was mekuyim. He had to hear a teshuvah and he becomes a tzaddik. He's a big Rasha, famous Rasha, and he has to hear a teshuvah. He's a tzaddik. So, okay, what happened to? So one hear a teshuvah, you become a tzaddik. What happened to the whole process of teshuvah? Vidui, charota, zivasachet, kabbalah ala osid, the whole process of teshuvah. You don't need the whole process of teshuvah. Just have a hear a teshuvah for a brief moment, have a hear a teshuvah, and you're a tzaddik. So what's the point of teshuvah? Also, another question, you find in Ovis, the Mishnah says in Perek Daled, Mishnah Yud Zayin, Yofe sho achaz b'teshuvah masim toivim b'olam hazeh mikol chaya olam haba. One moment of teshuvah in this world is better than the whole olam haba. So you have to understand what this means, that a moment of teshuvah, either an averi, the teshuvah, what does this mean? And why does it say teshuvah masim toivim? Why doesn't it say yofeh shachas Torah mitzvahs? What's teshuvah and masim toivim? What are these two things? Masim toivim. I mean, there are many mitzvahs a person could do. What's masim toivim? Also needs an explanation. And I also mention one more Gemara before we get. It's a Gemara in Pesachim. Gemara says, Shiva dvarim nivru kodim shenivra olam ve'elahein. Torah, Utshuva, V'Ganeden, Gehenim, Kisyakovet, Beis Mikdash, Moshe Mashiach. One of the things that was created before the world was created, it was a prerequisite that had to be there before the world was created, was Tshuva. Now, I understand that to be a Kisyakovet and Torah, and the idea of the Beis Mikdash, but Tshuva had to be created before the world was created. That had to be a new bri of Tshuva. What does this mean? What is this bri of Tshuva that was created before the world? Rebbeinu Shalom is Meichel you. I mean, it's a bria. Rebbeinu Shalom is a merachem. A person did an aveira. He's sorry. He did teshuvah. Rebbeinu Shalom is merachem, and he forgives. What kind of a bria is this teshuvah? So, I'll ask one more question. In Shmoneh Esrei we say, Hashiveinu Hashem Melechav Nashuva. Wait, now what does it say? Roitza b'tshuva, right? So we make a bracha on tshuva. And then we say, Slach lanu v'nikichatanu. First we should say, Slach lanu v'nikichatanu. We weren't mizvada yet that we did an aveira. And we're asking for tshuva? What does this mean? So the idea of tshuva is, the Mabit says in the Beis Elokim, that tshuva is eskarvus le'boirei merichok achet. A person does an aveira, he becomes distant from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Tshuva is the recovery of that distance. A person can recover that distance through tshuva. Now, a hirud tshuva, a person has a hirud tshuva, it wipes out the chet. He's sorry, it wipes out the chet. But he's still meruchik. He's still very, very far away from the Rebbeinu Shalom. He needs the process of tshuva to bring himself closer to the Rabbi Shalom. Since he was nisrachik, then he has to really, do vidui and charota and the whole process, and as achet, that all these things he has to go through this whole process. This will bring him back to kurva with the Rabbi Shalom. But tshuva really is something which is independent of chet. The idea of tshuva is that a person, by an act of will, can bring himself closer to the Rabbi Shalom. A person is where he is, he didn't do any averis, and he wants to come closer to the Rabbi Shalom. So there's a process of coming closer to Rabbi Shalom which is called tshuva. And that is something that was created before the world existed, that it's an idea, a process, a concept that it's possible to become closer to Rabbi Shalom with an act of will. Just however we're going to define, a person does teshuvah. Teshuvah is something separate from davening. Teshuvah means I want to be close to Rabbi Shalom, and that is Mekar present to Rabbi Shalom. So that has nothing to do with Rabbi Shalom being Meichel you and Rachmanas. Rabbi Shalom is Merachem, he's Meichel you. But how does a person recover? How can a person recover the richuk of the chet, or even without the chet? How can a person become a kurv to Rabbi Shalom? That is a new bria called tshuva. And when we say in davening, we hit the bracha on tshuva, that's not. Of course, when you do a chet, you have to use tshuva, but you can do tshuva without doing a chet. You don't need to do a chet, you can do tshuva. The idea of tshuva is that tshuva, you can be makar of yourself to Rabbi Shalom with an act of will. So what the Mishnah is saying over there in Avos is that, of course, Torah mitzvahs, Bailam Azeh, Olam Haba is all, the Torah mitzvahs you learn here, you have there, it's all the same. But tshuva and ma'asim tovim are two ways that a person can draw himself close to Rabbi Shalom. He can do tshuva without a chet. He can do tshuva, which doesn't exist in the Olam Haba. Torah exists in the Olam Haba. The tshuva that a person should be miskar to Rabbi Shalom through an act of will does not exist in Olam Haba. Ma'asim tovim is also what are ma'asim tovim? How are they different from tefillin or lulav? Ma'asim tovim is velachta b'dracha. When you medama to the midas of Rabbi Shalom, when you emulate what he does, that also draws you close. So a person could draw close to Rabbi Shalom either through tshuva or through ma'asim tovim. These things only exist in Olam Hazeh, where a person could be a hoiler, could be constantly in a process of becoming closer. Olam Haba is a static world. You are what you are, and that's it. There's no progressing. Olam Hazeh, you can progress. How do you progress? Tshuva, ma'asim tovim. Those are acts of progressing. Of course, if a person is Torah mitzvahs, he memela progresses, but pure progress, pure hiskarvus to Rabbi Shalom, that comes through tshuva and ma'asim tovim. So, what Rashi is saying by Refidim, Rashi is saying that when they came to Midbar Sinai, that was the ultimate of Iskarvus to Rabban Shalom. This was, he was Mekaravas to bring us to Har Sinai. That was Kurva. That was Teshuvah. That was active Teshuvah. Coming to Har Sinai and standing by Har Sinai and being Makabel the Torah and having having the Nevuah and the Gil Shechina and everything. That is that is Teshuvah. That is Teshuvah, means coming close, approaching. So that is there. So he's making a hekesh. And just like over there was a Iskarvus. It was the hefts of Iskarvus. It was like pure Teshuvah. So Huadin, same thing. When they left Refidim, they also left with Teshuvah. That's what I want to say about this. Now I want to talk about this important issue. So, everything is important. Teshuvah is very important. But this, what I want to talk about now, has to do with it goes to the heart of our Amunah. It says, by the Aseres Dibros, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Hotzisicha Meretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem, your Lord, who brought you out from Mitzrayim. So Rashi says like this. Lama Omar B'Loshen Yochid. It doesn't say Anochi Hashem Elokechem Asher Tzeisi Eschem Meretz Mitzrayim. No, it says Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzeisicha Meretz Mitzrayim. B'Loshen Yochid. It should be B'Loshen Rabbim. Lama Omar B'Loshen Yochid Elokecha Litein Pischem Pel Moshe L'Lamed Sanagoria B'Maisa Eigel. When they'll be in the Eigel, when the Klaus will be chayta with the Eigel, that he will be the advocate, the defender, and he has an argument. What's his argument? So he could say, Loi lahem tzivisa, didn't say Yir lachem elahim acherim. He didn't say it to them, Elali levadi, he told me. You. He was talking to me personally. You weren't talking to them. All of Klal Yisrael is Bahar Sinai, standing here, and the Rebbeinu Shalom is having a private conversation with Moshe, and he's telling him, I'm not telling them, telling you shouldn't go to a getchka, you shouldn't go to have Elohim Acherim. What kind of an argument is this? And you should know, the whole thing, everything is in Lashon Yachid, and there are many mitzvahs in the Torah that are B'Lashon Yachid, tremendous number of mitzvahs that are B'Lashon Yachid. So everything was only said to him. He was the only one who got the mitzvahs and got the Torah, and the rest of Klal Yisrael didn't get the Torah. What is he saying? It's a plea of this Rashi. Okay. Yitzias Mitzrayim. How many mitzvahs are there in the Torah that are related to Yitzias Mitzrayim? How many mitzvahs? I think I didn't count it lately, but I think one time I saw that the number was 125 or 124. And numerous mitzvahs are connected to Yitzias Mitzrayim. Some of them are the direct mitzvahs of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, Matzah, all the Pesach, all these things, and there are many that just mention Yitzias Mitzrayim. Don't eat shrotzim, ki anochi Hashem lokecha hamalcha meretz Mitzrayim. Just mention it. It's just it's just tangential to the Isser. But it's mentioned many, many, many times. Shabbos, like we have over here, the Zochas Yom Shabbos L'Katshoi. Why? It's Zeichel Ma'aseh Bereishis. And then in Veschanon, in the Seres Dibros, it says that the Keved Yisro Beretz Mitzrayim, that you should remember Yitzias Mitzrayim. So there's two things: you remember Ma'aseh Bereishis, and you remember Yitzias Mitzrayim through Shabbos. And in Kiddush, we say both. Zeichel Ma'aseh Bereishis, Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. We say both, because that appears in both times, in these Aseret Dibros and those. But in the Shemoneh Esrei, when we daven on Shabbos, we have 3 tefillas. At night, we talk about Brias Olam. We say, you have Eigel Shema V'Oretz, talk about Brias Olam. In the morning, we talk about the Shmir Shabbos, right? Chen Kosben Shmir Shabbos, V'loy Nesat El Goyim, the mitzvah Shmir Shabbos, that we talk about in the morning. And by Mincha, we talk about Menucha, but we don't mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. So it means that Yetzias Mitzrayim is not essential to Shabbos. It's not really what Shabbos is about. Shabbos is about Shabbos Bereishis. Shabbos is about Brias Olam. But even though Shabbos is about Brias Olam, the Torah will connect it somehow to Yetzias Mitzrayim. Numerous mitzvahs are connected to Yetzias Mitzrayim. How many times do we mention Yetzias Mitzrayim in Birchas Kriya Shema? Yeah, we do. Now, how about the Mattan Torah? So, if we had a choice, let's say we have the 2 seminal events of our history are Yetzias Mitzrayim and Mattan Torah. Yetzias Mitzrayim was a preparation for Mattan Torah. Fine. But let's say the Rebbeinu Shalom was only going to do one. I mean, he could have given us the Torah without Yetzias Mitzrayim. Of course, Yetzias Mitzrayim prepared us, I understand. And it's really very important. But let's say there would be only one. So either Yetzias Mitzrayim with no Mattan Torah, or Mattan Torah with no Yetzias Mitzrayim. Which one is better? Which one would we prefer? Which one would we choose? Mattan Torah. That's who we are. Mattan Torah. If we had Yetzias Mitzrayim without Mattan Torah, we would just be goyim who had a miraculous thing happen to us in the past. So Yetzias Mitzrayim is important. Mattan Torah is more important. Okay. How many mitzvahs are there that are connected to Mattan Torah? How many? 124 to Yetzias Mitzrayim. How many are connected to Mattan Torah? 1. Mission did it here. One mitzvah. Raki shomer lecha shmor nafshcha ma'od pen tishkach es advorim ashro einecha pen yisuru milvavecha. You have to remember Yoim eshamata v'nei Hashem l'kacha b'chayrev v'atikru v'tam tachas ahar v'har bar b'esh d'lei v'shmayim chayshech hana v'arafa. You have to remember, one of the Sheish Skiris, you have to remember Mattan Torah. This is the only mitzvah that has any kind of connection to Mattan Torah. So how come for Yetzias Mattan Torah is more important than Yetzias Mitzrayim? So how come Yetzias Mitzrayim has so many mentions? We talk about it all the time and so many mitzvahs, and Mattan Torah has only one mitzvah. And there's another point that in here the Maisa, when it happened in Mattan Torah, V'har Sinai Oshun Kuloi Mipnei Asher Yorad Alav Hashem Ba'esh, because Hashem came down on the mountain and there was a fire. However, in the mitzvah of Yishomer Lecha, it says V'har Bayer Ba'esh Ad Lev Hashamayim. It tells you when we're supposed to remember Mattan Torah. So we remember that the fire was in flame, and the flame went all the way up to the heart of the heavens, which is, I don't know, the stratosphere, I don't know what it is. But a huge fire went all the way up. Here, it doesn't say that. Where it actually happened, it doesn't say that. It just says a har bar baish. Okay, so, let me... Yes. I have like a scenario which I was speaking about this Indian. I was talking to a group of students, and I said to them like this: let's say a murderer is in prison. 10 years later, he comes to the warden and he says, "You have to let me go." He says, "Why?" He says, "Because you go online or you read in the books, you'll see that within 7 to 10 years, all the cells of a person are exchanged. All the old cells are gone, and you have new cells. So it wasn't me. I didn't kill it. I didn't kill anybody. All my cells have gone. Even the cells in the decision-making part of the brain also get exchanged. So you have to let me go. That was 10 years ago me, but now I'm a different person, so let me go." So one of the students was a law student. So he says, "I could work with that." I said, he's going to be a good lawyer. But it's not an argument. Why? Because the person is one person. It's changed, come and go, but the person is the same person. The cells come, cells go. But the person is the same person. So look what the Gemara says here in Tamura. Gemara says like this, that when they came back from Bavel, they brought a chatas tzibur for avodah zarah also b'mei cheskia. This was 70 years before they left, so they did avodah zarah. So they brought a chatas tzibur when they came back, a chatas sorry avodah chachavim to be mechaper and avodah zarah they did in the time of Chizkiah. So Kasol Kedai told the Gemara held that man is like chatas tzibur. That I'll get into this, but the Gemara held that a chatas tzibur shemeisa baleh is meisa. The din is that a chatas shemeisa baleh, if you have a chatas and the person who was mafresh the chatas died, so the chatas is possible. It goes lemisa. Who had din by tzibur? If the tzibur died, it goes lemisa. So how could you bring the carbon now? The 70 years ago they were all dead. And the Gemara speaks about that maybe somebody didn't die. But anyway, the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, no. Afilu l'man da'am chatas tzibur shekipru b'la meisa. If the mischaper, then the chatas tzibur is meisa, but chatas tzibur shemeisa b'la eina meisa. Why? L'fi she'ein hatzibur meisa. This is the concept that the Torah says. A tzibur doesn't die. A tzibur is an organism, and the individuals in the tzibur are cells. So old cells die, new cells replace it. The organism is still the same. The tzibur ein, hatzibur mesim. A tzibur never dies. New cells replace the old cells, but the organism is the same. We today are the same Klal Yisrael that stood by Har Sinai, the same Klal Yisrael that went out of Mitzrayim. We're the same. Not that they died and we're new people. No, we're not new people. The Tzibur was there. The Tzibur came out of Mitzrayim. Mattan Torah went through history and is here. And this Tzibur of Klal Yisrael today is the same Tzibur that came out of Mitzrayim. But the people who were alive then, the cells of this Tzibur who were alive then, they died, and new cells replaced them, and they died, new cells replacement, and we are the current cells. So we have actually two roles. We're individuals, we're ourselves, we have our own lives, but we're also cells on the Tzibur. We're part of the Tzibur. So you see that the tzibur, even though nobody alive today was over on chatas, was over on avodah zarah. Nobody that's alive was over. Came back from Bavel, new people, but the tzibur is alive. And if the tzibur is alive, the tzibur needs a kapara. So all the people alive today, as the tzibur, need a kapara. That's what we see. The tzibur has a chet. Even though we didn't do it, the tzibur has a chet. So, what Moshe is saying over here, he's saying, so I would like to say this pshat, that and this is a pischem peh, and it's a legitimate taina, because the Rebbeinu Shalom fed it to him. He told them, I'm giving you the opportunity of saying, no, I was talking to you, not to everybody else. So obviously there's substance to this taina. And maybe it worked. Hashem gave it to him. It worked. How did it work? I mean, what does this mean? He's talking to him? He's not, nobody else? So I think what Moshe was saying is that you were talking to me as an individual. You were not talking to the whole tzibur, as a tzibur. This was to me as an individual. And who had been to every other individual? But Avodah Zarah is an individual Aveira. It's not an Aveira that was given to the klal. It wasn't given to the tzibur. The tzibur was not mitzvah not to do Avodah Zarah. So they do Avodah Zarah. The people that do Avodah Zarah, they have an individual responsibility for it. So what happened by the Eigel? They went and they killed 3,000 people. So all the people that I'm assuming nobody got away. So those people that died, that did it, they died. But they were individuals, so they deserve to die. Why does the whole tzibur have to suffer for this? Is this a chet of the tzibur? That's what Moshe was saying. It's not a chet of the tzibur. It's a chet of yechidim. So let the yechidim pay the price. But why should the whole tzibur be punished for this? Moshe wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael. He wanted to do so. He wanted to punish the tzibur. Why? That's what he said. The tzibur shouldn't have to be punished, because whether it was given to the tzibur or not. But certainly we thought so, because you said it b'lashon yachid. So we thought that it's not a klal isser, it's just an individual isser. So the individuals that did it, so they should be punished. But why should the rest of them be punished? That was Moshe's taina, and maybe it worked a little bit. Maybe it worked, so maybe it mitigated the punishment to a certain extent. But this was really something real. Now, one more thing I want to point out here. This idea, by the way, this idea of the tzibur, this is critical to understand Klal Yisrael. To understand that we are a tzibur. You know, sometimes we're judged as a tzibur. Sometimes the yechidim, one by one, but usually it is the tzibur, that the tzibur is more important than the yechidim. The organism of Klal Yisrael, that's what it's about. The bris of the Rebbeinu Shalom is with the tzibur. It says in Parshas Nitzavim that he made a new bris. I'm making a bris with those who are, this thing on Arvis Moav, Evar Yarden, right before they go to Yisro, they made a new bris. I'm making with the ones that are here, those that are not here. Rashi says, Af im doiris hasidim liyos. I'm making the bris with the future generations. How do you make a bris with future generations? They weren't born yet. You didn't ask them. You didn't make a bris with them. Why? Because all the neshama, even like you say by Har Sinai, all the neshamas came down. But you have to understand what that means also, all the neshamas came down. The neshamas of the Gerim were there, right? If the neshamas of the Gerim were there, then they have no Bechira anymore. What's the Bechira? If you know, of course, the Rebbeinu Shalom, Yediyah and Bechira are not a stira. The Rebbeinu Shalom could know what's going to happen in the future. He circumvents the whole world, and he knows what's going to happen in the future. But if in this world, the Neshama of the Ger came down and was there at Har Sinai, then of course he has to become a Ger. So he has no Bechira. So why? V'haftam is a Ger, because he chose. He had no choice. He had to. His Neshama was there. So what does that mean? It says in the Gemara Shabbos says that Kimu v'Kiblu by Shushan, they were Makabel again. The first time, now they were Makabel again. So Klal Yisrael is Makabel again. Where will the old neshamas came to Shushan? This is when the Ravans asked me this. Old neshamas came to Shushan. How did you make a new bris? Why Har Sinai old neshamas came? Over here, old neshamas came. No, the word old neshamas came means that the neshama klalis was there, Klal Yisrael was there. Any ger that becomes a ger and is mischaber to Klal Yisrael and becomes integrated into the tzibur of Klal Yisrael, then he was there because the tzibur was there, and he is part of the tzibur. So, but he as an individual, he wasn't there, and he had the bechira to become a ger or not. But as neshama klolus was there. So all the future generations are part of that neshama klolus, and therefore you make a bris. The bris obligates all future generations. That's what it says over here. The neshama klolus, the klal. That's what it says. In a little bit of a chulin way, I'll explain. Just to give you an example, you have an American Constitution. We're all obligated to the American Constitution. Who's alive today that signed on the Constitution? Nobody. So why does it obligate us? Because the American klal, not only klal Yisrael is a klal, all kinds of klalim. The Americans are a klal. The French are a klal. Everybody's a klal. They have their own klal. So the klal of America was mekabel on itself this Constitution. It was mechayiv itself the Constitution. Therefore, as long as that klal exists, as long as it's at the institutions, the klal still exists, then it's obligated to the Constitution. Maybe if you have like a Russian Revolution, which sort of dismantles the entire imperial Russian klal and creates a new klal, maybe that would be different. But as long as the same klal is continuing, then it's obligated. So you see over here two things now so far. You see that the klal has a responsibility. It can be punished, has a responsibility. You see that the klal can obligate itself, and the obligation devolves on the klal, and it follows the klal through all the individual changes of cells back and forth, but the obligation that the klal takes on itself continues, can say that as long as the klal exists, all the obligations that it assumed, the bris that it made exists, and is mechayiv the klal. So therefore you can make a bris, esher yeshnu pai, v'esher inenu pai. Now, there's another thing. In 1999, there was war in Kosovo. Kosovo was part of the Yugoslav Confederation. It was Yugoslavia, was the southern Slavs, and it was a confederation of Serbia and Croatia and Bosnia and Montenegro and Herzegovina and Macedonia and Kosovo, and I don't know if I left anything out. But all these were together. And in 1999, the Yugoslav Confederation disintegrated, and all these countries, all their old grievances came back up, and they took revenge. So there was actually it was before 1999, but this happened in the early 1990s. So the Serbs took revenge on the Kosovars, and they attacked Kosovo, and there was ethnic cleansing and all kinds of things were going on. We had to send bombers there to stop it. It was like a war. It was a really heavy war. What were they taking revenge for? They were taking revenge for their ignominious defeat at the hands of the Kosovars in the Battle of Kosovo. The Kosovars defeated them, and they wanted payback. They wanted to get back at them. 1999. When was the Battle of Kosovo? When was it? 1899? 1799? No. It was in 1369. In 1369, there was a battle, and there was like a humiliating defeat, and the Serbs want revenge, and they waited 600 years. Later, 630 years later, they took revenge on the Kosovars for the humiliation that they suffered at the Battle of Kosovo in 1369. Now, after that, there was the Ottomans came in, and the Ottomans conquered the Balkan Peninsula, so they had control. So everything there was a lid on it. And then after the Ottomans, then the Yugoslavs, Tito and the Yugoslavs, then there was another confederation which had another lid on it. But once the lid came off, it came out, the revenge. 600 years later, Ritzicha, hatred. What How did this happen? Did they read it in a book? They never forgot it. The Serbians never forgot their humiliation, and that hatred and that revenge, it percolated and it boiled, and it continued for 600 years until they had the opportunity to take revenge. So this was not something that they read in a book, and not something somebody told them. This was a living memory. The memory came down over the years. Every time they were sitting there and their parents were saying, if I can get a hold of the Kosovars, I'd rip their throats out, and they heard it from their parents, and the memory continued, it passed down, and it was not forgotten 600 years later. Not only the fact, but the feeling, the rage, it all came down, the memory preserved it. I was born after the Holocaust. But, people deny the Holocaust. You could deny the Holocaust, say, is it this, is it that, but you can't deny the Holocaust. Somebody was there. Somebody remembers it. Now, I remember it, even though I wasn't there, because it was part of my life. When I was growing up, people were coming out of Auschwitz and refugees, and this, they were here. It was all part of my life, the Holocaust. So even though I wasn't there, I shared the collective memory of the Holocaust. It's something that I shared. That memory I had, even though I didn't have it as an individual, I had it as part of the collective. And this continued for a while. I don't know if today it still exists. I don't know if we have a collective memory of the Holocaust, because we didn't do very much to preserve it. We have a collective memory of the Churban. We have a collective memory of the Churban. We really remember the Churban because it's such a big part of our lives. Talking in America. Let's say you would say that there was no slavery in America. How do you know there was slavery? Because you have documents? Because you have, how do you know there was slavery? Because it says in the history books. History books lie all the time. Documents can be falsified. How do you know? We know because we remember it. Because race is the biggest component of our social consciousness now. American life is all about race, all about, the whites hating the blacks and the blacks having resentment. It's all there, it's alive. This is not something that's just a fact that we are told. We witness it, we share it, we remember it. Even like I remember it, even though, I was born here, my parents came from Europe, and still, but by being here and being part of American society and being part of this klal, then we have, whoever's part of this society shares the collective memories. And the American society has a very powerful collective memory of slavery, and whoever's part of that society shares it, even though nobody's alive who's ever there, but whoever witnessed the slavery. So this is the collective now. So we know that the collective has obligations. It has it can be punished. And we know that the collective has a memory. Collective has a memory. Klal Yisrael had. How do we know that Yetzias Mitzrayim happened? How do we know? We have philosophical arguments, and but everything we have evidence. We have this, so evidence can always be disputed. The only thing that cannot be disputed is a memory. If you remember, you can't be disputed. All the professors in the world could write history books saying that slavery never happened. It won't make a difference because the memory is there. You cannot dispute a memory. So the Torah came here and made all these Zechel Yetzias Mitzrayim. It wasn't time to put up memorial plaques. The Torah, the genius of the Torah, the genius of Chazal, was to construct a memory of Yetzias Mitzrayim that would last forever. How did the Torah do this? By every part of our life. It wove Mitzrayim into every aspect of our life. Everything that we do. It's always a whole day in our davening and our mitzvahs and everything. It's always Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim. Everything is connected to Mitzrayim. We live Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's not just something that we know as a fact. It's something that we live. It's not like we're not looking for revenge on the Egyptians. But emotion also helps the memory. Emotion drives the memory. See, by the Serbs, these powerful, or here, the powerful emotions drive a memory. So, of course, if we take this memory that the Torah constructed for us, and we invested with emotion, religious emotion, if we invested with, like we spoke about it in Parshas Boy, about having an emotional connection to our ancestors in Mitzrayim, to caring about it, so that would infuse emotion into the memory. So Yetzias Mitzrayim is woven into our life. Wherever we turn, it's all Yetzias Mitzrayim, and as much emotion as we put into it just makes the memory stronger. With less emotion, it's still there, but it's still, but it's not as strong. The more emotion we put into it, the more that's why. Okay, I go over there. So, and that's why we always talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why don't we talk about Mattan Torah? The reason we don't talk about Mattan Torah, because you cannot construct a collective memory on Mattan Torah. Mattan Torah, we can construct a collective memory on Yetzias Mitzrayim because our minds can conjure the images of being exploited and oppressed, being beaten by slave masters, walking out of Mitzrayim with sacks on our shoulders, the sea splitting and we go through it. All these things are things that we can conjure in our minds. We cannot conjure in our minds Mattan Torah because Mattan Torah was a nevuah. We were all Nevi'im. It says in the Psikta, the Rambam talks about in the Meira, everybody was a Navi. You saw Gilui Shechina. We stood at Har Sinai and we saw Gilui Shechina. So how did you remember Gilui Shechina? What did it look like? V'ham royim es hakoilos. We saw the koilos. How do you remember seeing the koilos? We have no context for that. We cannot remember such a thing. So therefore you cannot build the collective memory on Mattan Torah. We can remember Mattan Torah in the context of Yetzias Mitzrayim, because we were going out of Mitzrayim and we're counting Sphira and we're going to Har Sinai and there we got the Torah. So therefore, connected to Yetzias Mitzrayim, we can remember Mattan Torah. But actually, Mattan Torah itself, the event, the Ma'ira of Mattan Torah, it's not possible for us to remember that. That's why it says, when it talks about even Shavuos, it says in the Parsha of Shavuos, Shiva Shavuos Sispalach Malcha Chamesh V'Samachta Fnei Hashem Elokecha. Why? V'Zacharta Ki Eved Yisro B'Mitzrayim. Shavuos is Eigel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Everything is Eigel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Zeichel Mattan Torah is not possible. The only thing that we have is the mitzvah of Ishomer Lecha, and if you notice, on the Sheish Chiris, all of them is Tizkar, you should remember, and by the mitzvah of here, it's a different lashon. It doesn't say Tizkar. It says Ishomer Lecha, Shmar Nafshcha Ma'od. It's a very difficult thing, but make sure that you do not forget that you keep a memory of Mattan Torah. What can you remember of Mattan Torah? So the Bach says, and Simon Mem Zayin, that you have to remember Mattan Torah when you make Birchas Torah. What do you remember? You remember that there was a fire. A fire. A fire is not a nevuah. There was a fire. So that's what we can remember. We can remember the fire. So we have to remember there was a Mattan Torah. We remember we stood by the mountain and there was a fire. That is the extent of the memory that we have from Mattan Torah. Anything else that happened there, we cannot remember. We know what happened there because it says in the Torah, because we believe it, because we believe in Mattan Torah because of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we believe everything is Yetzias Mitzrayim. The whole Emunah is based on Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's why in Parshas Yisro, when it says that you should, and when it talks about that the mountain was burning, there was an eish, says there was a fire. But when it comes to the mitzvah v'shamar lecha, it's a small point. The fire on the mountain was a minor detail in the whole event. It was a Gilish Shechina, Livs Sapir. It was a Gilish Shechina. And there was a fire. Okay, so there was a fire. It's very minor in the whole context of Mattan Torah. However, when it comes to the mitzvah of Yishamar Lecha, then the only thing that we can remember is that fire. So the Torah takes that fire, it takes that detail of the entire portrait, and it enhances it for us, and it tells us that it was Boyer Ad Lev HaShamayim, that it was a huge fire, and now we know about the fire, because this is all we can remember, all we can talk about is this fire. So anyway, so this I think is and this is so it all comes back to this. It comes back to the idea of the klal. The klal can make obligations. The klal can be punished for averos. The klal can do averos, and the klal has a memory. And the memory of the klal is built on Yetzias Mitzrayim, not on Mattan Torah, and that's why everything is all the time we mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's why we don't mention Mattan Torah, because we just don't mention it. There's a function to mention. This is the genius of the Torah. Yetzias Mitzrayim, wherever you turn, it's Yetzias Mitzrayim. Everything we do is for Yetzias Mitzrayim. Make Kiddush, everything we do, Shabbos, everything is Yetzias Mitzrayim. So that keeps the memory of Yetzias Mitzrayim alive, because it's our life. That's why. And this is how it could go on forever. And as much koyach as we put into this memory, that's how much this memory continues with power. But just the fact alone that it's in, you see people that are not religious, I read somewhere that American Jews, 50% go on Yom Kippur, will go to any kind of a shul, 50%. 85% will make a seder. Why is that? Why? Okay, so there's food, I know. You try to fly across the country for food, family, because everybody has the memory. So to them, the memory extends to coming to the seder. They understand how critical it is, how important it is. They remember Yetzias Mitzrayim on some level, and that's why they come. But if we keep the Torah, then it's everything that we do every single day. The memory of Yetzias Mitzrayim is built into it, and in that way it could go on forever. Ad B'yaz Goyal Tzedek. Thank you very much. I hope to see you again next week.